Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for inquiring about the price of this or any Watchbox watch that catches your fancy. Reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we are discussing a circa 2011 Panerai Luminor 1950 left-handed 8 Days Titanio PAM 368. So it is a lefty with a 1950 case, grade 5 titanium, 47 millimeters. It is a large watch. 47 is the diameter. It's 17.8 thick, which means it is definitely a plus-sized model, and 57.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 26 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw it on my wrist, and my wrist is 16 centimeters circumference, and frankly, I would not recommend this watch for a wrist any smaller than mine. If your wrist is much smaller, these lugs are going to overlap the edge of your wrist, and it's going to be quite apparent and awkward. The watch is so thick that I wouldn't recommend it for wear underneath a cuff. If you think it's going to disappear under a dress shirt, you're wrong, no matter how big your wrist is. This watch, however, does sit lightly because it's made mostly of titanium and sapphire, and those are not very dense materials, so the lightness is admirable, but the size is huge. Taking a quick look at the strap, you can see Panerai attaches the strap using a quick release system. You actually press this little trigger on the bottom, it's spring loaded, and then you force the bar through. So you push the trigger, push the bar through, it releases the strap. This is better than previous systems the Panerai used that included screws and screwdrivers because there's no danger of defacing your lugs, and it's a much more deluxe system than Panerai has used recently because it's adopted spring bars in the last 7 years a little too frequently for a luxury brand. This is the way it should be done. The quick release system is a cinch to use. The strap is dark brown, medium rectangular scale alligator leather. The thickness of the leather is immense. There's some bolstering or stuffing to add thickness to the strap. There's a contrasting stitch. And remember, most Panerai straps are textile, rubber, or calfskin, so to get gator is upscale. This is a luxury piece, even by Panerai standards. Calfskin on the bottom. Note a brand new Panerai factory strap, no crimping, no gouging. The watch comes with a simple satin finished trapezoidal titanium Panerai branded pin buckle. And then we get back to the case, and you can see it's the 1950 case, which is more complex than the Betterini case. The 1950 case was first launched in the modern era on the PAM 127 back in 2002, and historically it represents the 6152 combat watch of the 1950s. So this is both closer in size and style to historic Panerai combat watches. Now, of course, there's the Destro series, designed to be worn by those who are left-handed, so you would wear this watch on your right hand. So that's what the Destro is all about. However, I can assure you that this is an ambidextrous watch, and I am right-handed, and wearing this on my left cuff, there's no issue. It's not going to gouge my wrist. I've never had an issue wearing a Panerai Destro on my left wrist. Okay, jumping back to the case, you can see that it's got a polished bezel to contrast with the satin finish of the case, and it has a locking crown guard. You can see there's a little bearing called the runner inside the cam lobe, and you lock the watch using the cam. You can see how the crown and its seals compress as I close the cam. This is a very clever system because it doesn't require me to thread the crown through its seals, and that was one of the problems with the original 3646 Panerai watches built by Rolex with the oyster crown. They were manual winds, so you were constantly threading the crown in and out, wearing out the seals. Well, this compresses and decompresses, and it relieves that wear and tear. It's also tough to accidentally jump in the water when your crown is unlocked, whereas it's easy to miss a few extra turns on a screw-down crown. This is a lot harder to miss. It's also worth mentioning that this device protecting the crown, which is what it's technically called, developed in the late 40s, implemented in the 50s, it gives you 180-degree protection from impact on the crown, whereas a conventional crown guard, and I'll use my watch here, it can still suffer direct impact, and this cannot. It's also a design icon, bar none. Take a quick look at the dial. It's a sandwich dial, which means there's a stencil with the numerals and indices sitting on top of a solid disc of lume. So the stencil creates a little bit of depth. If you look at it from an angle, you can see that all of the luminescent elements sit within wells that have depth on the dial, and it is a very legible watch. It's also one of the few watches that you can recognize instantly in the dark. Taking a look at the dial, it's a tobacco color, it's matte finished. The watch features rose gold plated hands, and there are a couple of setting modes here. First, And I should mention, it's a lot easier to use this crown when your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved than a screw down. You have this time zone function that allows you to jump forward or backwards while the watch continues to keep time. The minute hand is not affected, the seconds hand is not affected. This is great for travelers. Now, the other thing that's worth mentioning is that the watch features a hacking system or stop seconds with 0 reset. So if you watch the little seconds subdial right there, now I'm going to push the crown all the way out, and you can see that it stops the hand, but it also resets it to the index at 60, and that makes it a lot easier to set the time against a reference. Turn it all over. This is the caliber P2002-9. It's from the first generation of Panerai in-house calibers from the mid-2000s, and all of the original 2000 series movements were over-engineered. Panerai and movement designer Eric Klein wanted to go the extra mile to make the first manufacture movements by Panerai some of the most sophisticated in the industry, to get them away from the ETA-powered reputation. So this watch has 3 main spring barrels, and it has 8 days of power reserve. In reality, it's a little bit more. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It has a case-back power reserve indicator. One of the silliest features of this watch is the fact that that power reserve indicator is loomed. So 8 days of reserve de manche, and then we have a full balance bridge and a free sprung index for shock tolerance. All this pivoting on 23 joules. And you can see, though, the bridges are actually broken up into 4 different segments. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. The look is supposed to read as a 3/4 bridge, as it would have basically been spec'd for the 30s, 40s, and 50s, as Panerai used pocket watch movements from Rolex Codebert and then later Angelus. So you have that look of a 3/4 pocket watch bridge. You also have the brushed finish that you would have seen on those movements. You can see the screw heads are polished, and then we have a mechanically executed but handsome mirrored bevel on the edge of every bridge with engine turning on the base plate. So it's a very good looking movement. All of this water resistant down to 100 meters, so it is swimmable. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.